Thanks for that nice introduction. My colleague Abed Haddad and I are pleased to share our research on Paul Cézanne's watercolors, which focused on media identification and microfade testing to elucidate the artist's materials and their light sensitivity. This was done in preparation for the recent MoMA exhibition, Cézanne Drawing. We will also discuss how the exhibition design accommodated the light-sensitive artworks and the use of spectrophotometry for monitoring color change. Organized by Senior Curator Jody Hopman, Associate Curator Samantha Friedman, and Curatorial Assistant Kiko Abi, the exhibition argued that although Cézanne is best known as an oil painter, it was on paper that he made his most experimental and modern works. Preparing a large loan exhibition of treasured drawings required close collaboration between museum departments, including conservation, science, exhibition design, and building operations, to balance the sensitivity of the artworks with the visual experience of the museum visitor. Paul Cézanne said painting from nature is not copying the object, it's realizing sensations, a term he applied to the visual perception of color, line, and space. Cézanne produced hundreds of watercolors, including landscapes, still lifes, and portraits. He applied paint in thin washes, building up vibrant layers of color and incorporating reserves of blank paper into the composition. We were acutely aware that the material qualities that define these works are also what makes them most vulnerable to light exposure. To better understand the current condition and sensitivity of these 100-plus-year-old works, 3 compositions in MoMA's collection were selected for analysis: Foliage, Study of Trees, and Mont Sainte-Victoire. These were chosen because they were central to the exhibition, are characteristic of the artist's working methods, and have media-related condition issues that are present in other Cézanne watercolors. And you can see that Foliage and Study with Trees are on the same support, which was a very common practice for the artist. Beginning in the 1890s, Cézanne most often used wove papers with an even surface texture for watercolor. Foliage and Study with Trees share a cream-colored, slightly textured wove sheet. It appears to be lower quality, perhaps a mixed fiber paper. On Foliage, minor overall darkening slightly mutes the vibrancy and contrast of thinly applied washes. Mont Sainte-Victoire is executed on a white, moderately textured sheet of Canson and Montgolfier wove rag paper. Their impressed watermark is visible on many of Cézanne's late works. While this sheet has minor edge discoloration from a previous mounting, it remains quite white, providing luminosity to the watercolor. We should all hope to age so well. Study of Trees displays mottled discoloration that occurs on some double-sided works. It's visible in normal light, but much more apparent under UV radiation. Here, darkening was likely caused by exposure to both light and an acidic environment. It's uneven because the media on the recto has acted as a physical barrier, mitigating light exposure and chemical degradation of the paper. Cézanne used a limited watercolor palette that he modified through dilution and mixing, as you can see in the details on the right. Previous technical studies conducted at the Courtauld and the Philadelphia Museum of Art identified several common watercolor pigments. Comparison of these with the artist's own frequent notations in his sketchbook, like you see in the image on the left, supported the consistency of his pigment selection. These sources guided our own analysis, which Abed will now discuss.
Thanks, Laura. Hi, everyone. So to better understand any color change phenomenon, analyze the drawings non-invasively using handheld X-ray fluorescence to elucidate the elemental composition of the pigments, and the following were identified in all 3: lead white, bone black, vermilion, yellow ochre, chrome yellow, emerald green, viridian, and cobalt blue. In all 3, an organic red was inferred in red passages that contained no color-bearing inorganic elements. Knowing the palette, we were able to better understand the most common paint discoloration observed in Cézanne's watercolors, which includes a dulling of organic reds and browning of emerald green. All 3 compositions displayed degrees of these issues, especially Study of Trees. As you can see in the detail on the left, Emerald green discoloration most often occurs in dilute passages, while denser areas retain their original hue. UV examination is a simple way to identify emerald green, as it strongly absorbs UV radiation. The browning likely results from chemical interactions between the pigment and acids in the paper, which can be catalyzed by light exposure. But circling back to Cézanne's notes, it is important to exercise care when translating his writings. Veronese green and emerald green are somewhat confusing terms. Copper acetoarsenite was marketed in England under the name emerald green, but in France that name was already used to describe iridium or hydrated chromium oxide, so copper acetoarsenite was sold as Veronese green instead. This distinction between vert Veronese and vert émeraude came into play when scanning Mont Sainte-Victoire using large area micro-XRF to map the distribution of the pigments across the drawing. While the map for copper shows the distribution of vert Veronese or copper acetoarsenite, the map for chromium is distinct and shows a selective use of vert émeraude or viridian to punctuate the landscape and the base of Mont Sainte-Victoire. Also, the lead and chromium maps are nearly unique in their distribution, confirming the presence of viridian and the light use of chrome yellow in this drawing. The lead map for lead white indicates that Cézanne used the pigment to lighten the yellow ochre and emerald green. Other maps are also shown here: cobalt for cobalt blue, iron for yellow ochre, mercury for vermilion. And beyond confirming the palette, XRF scanning further illuminates Cézanne's working technique, whereas idiomatic constructive brushstrokes, or marks applied in short bursts of a single brushload of color, are on clear display. To further clarify the nature of the organic red pigments, microsamples were taken from the drawings to be analyzed with Raman and surface-enhanced Raman spectroscopy. Here, alizarin lake was detected in Mont Sainte-Victoire, and carmine lake was detected in foliage. Combining this data with that acquired with XRF, we can say that both organic lakes are precipitated on aluminum bases and contain calcium-based fillers, likely calcium sulfate. And based on the lack of fluorescence under UV, we can infer that they are synthetic pigments. Keeping in mind that these drawings have experienced some discoloration and contain fugitive pigments, we sought to further characterize the light sensitivity of the palette. To that end, we employed microfade testing, or MFT, to induce microscopic color change using high-intensity LED lighting. Here, we see color change expressed as a function of delta E2000, which takes into account changes in the LAB color space, in addition to factors of hue and chroma. These values are compared qualitatively to those of Blue Wool standards 1, 2, and 3, which decreased in sensitivity from 1 to 3. As expected, the organic reds were among the most sensitive to change in all three drawings, with the colorants in Mont Sainte-Victoire faring far better. The paper used in foliage and study of trees appears to be indeed of lower quality and exhibits a higher degree of change than the paper used in Mont Sainte-Victoire. The colors in the drawings were then rated alongside a Blue Wool equivalency to better illustrate the differences between their palettes. Overall, across three drawings, the paper supports in carmine reds of foliage and study of trees proved to be the most sensitive areas. From the L variable, we can surmise global darkening most prominent in reds of foliage and study of trees, and yellows. From the C variable, we observe global loss in saturation, most prominent in carmine reds. However, the blues appear to deepen somewhat in color, which seems likely looking at the L variable, which shows relatively little darkening for the blues. In the A variable, or red to green, we see a relatively low amount of change for the entire palette, save for the dulling of the carmine lake in foliage and study of trees. In the B variable, or yellow to blue, we observe global cooling in tone, most prominent in the carmine reds and paper support of foliage and study of trees. As a supplement to the MFT, we monitored foliage and Mont Sainte-Victoire using spectrophotometry, which also measures LAB values. Measurements were taken of the paper and watercolor before and after exhibition to monitor real-time color change. During the show, a Wi-Fi data logger was installed in the gallery to precisely track hours of exposure. Knowing this value was necessary for comparing the spectrophotometry and MFT data. Given that MFT is an accelerated aging technique, a powerful light source is needed here to induce change over a short amount of time. JND, or just noticeable difference, which for the human eye is defined at delta E2000 of 1.5, is indicated here on the graph. Knowing the total exposure dosage for the microphade testing, a total of 1.65 megalux hours over 600 seconds, we were able to define the time at which the exhibition dosage intersects with the delta E2000 curve, that being 17 seconds for foliage, lit at 5-foot candles, or approximately 54 lux, and 21 seconds for Mont Sainte-Victoire, which was lit at 4-foot candles, or approximately 43 lux. As you can see, this is relatively early in the fading curve. The total exposure dosage for MFT of 1.65 megalux hours is approximately 28 4-month exhibitions at 5-foot candles and 36 4-month exhibitions at 4-foot candles. Now, this is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, that early in the curve might not accurately represent the change experienced by the drawings, but on the other hand, it indicates that it will require many more exhibition hours to possibly reach the level of change seen in the MFT. There are certain discrepancies between MFT and spectrophotometry which are apparent here. Various factors can contribute to this, including inhomogeneity of the surface, specular reflection from surface texture, the analysis spot size, which is 550 microns in MFT and 4 millimeters in spectrophotometry. Also, pigment load can have an effect, which is further magnified on the microscale. Additional factors, such as oxygen and humidity, can also play a role in how a pigment behaves during prolonged exposure to light. It is also possible that pigment chemistry itself is at play here. For example, the carmine exhibited a smaller degree of change in comparison with the MFT, which could be due to the acidity of the paper, which has been shown to slow down reaction rates in aluminum complex carbonic acid. Conversely, the acidic paper could have induced more change during exhibition in the copper acetoarsenite green, which is sensitive to acidic pH in combination with moisture and light. Overall, while there are discrepancies, each of these techniques presents a piece of the puzzle, and the remarkable consistency in pigment choices between the three drawings could allow for extrapolation of the results to many of Cézanne's other watercolors.
Understanding that these artworks remain sensitive to light was really a guiding principle for everyone involved with the exhibition. For building operations, that meant maintaining a special, more restricted lighting schedule in the galleries. For the design team, that meant optimizing the perceived brightness of the light while adhering to low levels. They used the tried and true trick of dark wall colors to help the papers appear brighter. Recent building renovations at MoMA, including blonde wood floors that reflect more light and new adjustable LED light fixtures, also made a big difference in the quality of ambient light in the galleries and the ability to make fine adjustments on individual artworks. The show also included several oil paintings, and keeping a low light level on these works, even though it wasn't stipulated, really helped maintain visual consistency. These simple strategies created a viewing experience that I think honored both the beauty and sensitivity of the artworks. 2 meditative watercolors closed our exhibition, and I think they also perfectly represent the conundrum of displaying light-sensitive artworks. Often our impulse as collection stewards is to keep these treasures hidden away, protected in a dark room to preserve their life. But there's no vibrancy in a work that's never seen. Using analytical tools to make more informed decisions about display won't cheat death, but it can help minimize risk. Thanks for listening, and a big thank you to the symposium organizers. I also want to acknowledge the generous lenders to the exhibition and greet a few colleagues who I got to meet as virtual couriers and are here today. I hope we can all meet in person one day. Maybe at the next symposium.